Okay, now, so inshallah we're going to speak about Hamzatul Qat, which translated means the dividing Hamza. Literally, Qat means to cut. And we'll find out why it has this name, inshallah. Now, before we talk about it, what is its sign? Now, the sign that scholars have given this is if we take the ayn, the last letter of the word Qat', and separate it. So we get the ayn on its own. And this top part here is actually Hamzatul Qat'. So it's this. Hamzatul Qat' can be written in 4 possible ways. In the 4 possible ways, there will always be this, the Hamza. But how it's written changes. Now let's look at some words that have Hamzatul Qat'. And we can see actually that we can have the Hamza all alone over here, as in the word Isha. We can also have it on top of an alif. Now what harakah is on top of the Hamza is irrelevant. It could be either one. It doesn't matter if it's a dhamma, a fatha or a kasra. But for example, with the alif, if there was a dhamma, the Hamza would still be on top. So for example, like that. If, for example, it had a kasra with the alif, then you'd put the actual Hamza below it and then put the kasra there. And similarly with the waw and the ya. So we'll find out also that a Hamza can be together with a waw and a ya without the 2 dots. And if, for example, these actually have a dhamma or a fatha or even a sukoon, as in this case, the Hamza will be written on top of the waw and on top of the ya. However, in the case of the kasra, it will be written below. So we'll have the Hamza below with the kasras. So anyway, getting back to here, let's just wipe this out. So we can see the 4 possible ways there. Being alone, with a alif, with a waw, and with a ya. Now, for example, now let's say we have the Hamza alone, we have the Hamza with an alif, the Hamza with a waw, and the Hamza with a ya. And let's give all these the same harakah. Let's say the dhamma. Each of these will be pronounced as a u sound. So u, 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 u. So the question is, if this occurs in a word, how do we know how to write it if there's 4 possible ways? Another point is that the Hamzatul Qat' can be in any position. And this is different from the other Hamza that we'll speak about later on. So it can be in the beginning of a word, in the middle of a word, or at the end. Let's speak about how to write the Hamza. Here we have 5 words, the same words. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how the Hamza is written. Now what I'm explaining here is a general rule. There are exceptions to it. But generally speaking, this is how you go about doing this. Is you look at the harakah before. So here, for example, we have the Hamza. Before it is a fatha. If fatha is before the Hamza, then the Hamza is written on an alif, as you can see here. Now when we have a letter that has a sukoon, as in these 2 words here, Isha and Daw. So here there's elongation, Isha, the long vowel, but here is actually a sukoon. And when this happens, the Hamza is all alone by itself in both of these cases. Here Isha means the time of the night when the light disappears, and Daw, which means light. Qara'a means he read. Next we have the Hamza, and before the Hamza is a dhamma. Now when this happens, the Hamza gets a waw. So mu'min, a believer. And finally, qari', before it is the kasra, and therefore it gets a ya. So to sum up, if we have a fatha, let's just put a line here. If we have a fatha before, the hamza gets an alif. If we have a letter with a sukoon, the hamza is all alone. If it has a dhamma before, the hamza gets a waw. And if the letter before the hamza is a kasra, then the hamza is associated with the ya, without the two dots, as in here. So here, qari' means one who recites, and qara'a means he read. Now the question, why do they call it the dividing hamza or the cutting hamza? Let's do an example of this. So here we have the sentence, Ja'a Muhammadun wa Ahmadu. That Muhammad and Ahmad came. Now the reason why it's called the dividing hamza is because it divides the word before it. So when they're pronounced as two separate words, wa and Ahmadu. This Hamzatul Qat' is always pronounced, regardless of its position in the sentence, as opposed to the other hamza we'll speak about later, inshallah. So just finally, here we have the verb ja'a. So notice here, we have an elongation of the alif. Here is a sukoon actually. So when there's an elongation, there's a sukoon there. And because there's a sukoon before the hamza is written all alone. So that's briefly about Hamzatul Qat'. And next lesson we'll speak about Hamzatul Wasl, inshallah.